is the newest movie brought to us directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer, the American scientist known as the father of the atomic bomb. This movie essentially serves as a biopic surrounding J. Robert Oppenheimer, who he was as a person, as a physicist, how he was recruited by the US military to lead the Manhattan Project, which led to the creation of the atomic bomb, and ultimately what he dealt with in creating such a weapon and the repercussions he felt after the weapon was used against Japan. This was, without question, one of my most anticipated movies of the whole year. Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors ever. He's made so many of my all-time favorite movies. The Dark Knight trilogy, possibly my favorite movie trilogy of all time. Other movies like Inception, The Prestige. I mean, the list goes on and on. He's made so many just incredible movies. He's in a small group of directors, for myself anyway, that if they are releasing a movie that year, it is immediately going to make my anticipation list that I do every year. Not only does he make such brilliant movies with really thought-provoking themes, or the way he tells the story with them, but not just that. They are movies that require you to really keep up with them. Like, he doesn't make casual watches. He requires an audience's full attention, and I admire that and appreciate that. But more so than that, he's very old-fashioned. He doesn't want to just CGI dump a movie. He doesn't want to just make a movie visually completely spectacle using a bunch of computer-generated imagery. In fact, he says in this movie there's not one shot of CGI. And the fact that he wants to be that old-fashioned and he wants to film in 70mm and just find different ways to give audiences a new way to experience movies, I just think that's remarkable. I was also really excited for Cillian Murphy's performance in this movie. He's been a part of so many of Christopher Nolan's projects, but he's never ever been the lead role in any of them. So I was very excited to finally see him really be in the forefront of not just a Christopher Nolan movie, but a movie in general. I can't remember the last time he really led a project. So after all the waiting, after all the anticipating, how is Oppenheimer itself as a movie? How does it stand up to other Christopher Nolan projects? How does it stand up to other movies that have gotten released this year? How is it? Lightly put, Oppenheimer is another monumental achievement in cinema. Christopher Nolan once again just slams it out of the park, and I was just blown away by this movie. No pun intended. Let's just get right into the performances out the gate. Alright, Cillian Murphy. I'm gonna say this right now. I know we still have about 6 or so months left, well, around 6 months left of movies that are about to come out. And we have performances like potentially Joaquin Phoenix in Napoleon, or maybe Adam Driver in Ferrari, or even my man Leonardo DiCaprio in Killers of the Flower Moon. But for me anyway, and people might say it's too early to say for sure, but I think the race for Best Actor is done. Cillian Murphy, for my money, has officially won that race. Cillian Murphy is absolutely extraordinary in this movie. So much so to the point where I didn't even see Cillian Murphy. I didn't see any of the characters he's played in the past. I just saw J. Robert Oppenheimer. What I really appreciate most with Cillian Murphy's performance is he does such a great job at showing the progression in what Oppenheimer went through as he was a part of this project more and more. You first meet him, he's very upbeat, he's smart, he's charismatic, he's kind of a womanizer. And then as he gets involved in this project, you really delve deep into his brain, how committed he is to this project, how quickly he takes over it and keeps telling the military what they need, what they don't need, how they're gonna go about this, why time is not on their side. And then there are moments, obviously after the Manhattan Project, where you really see him just kind of slump. I mean, you see pain in his face, you see fear in him. I mean, what Cillian Murphy just does with his facial expressions and the pain and the fear you see in his eyes. The man doesn't even have to be saying anything, and you completely buy into the performance. Like, it wouldn't shock me at all if, when the Oscars show those little clips of why actors are nominated, it wouldn't shock me at all if the clip they showed us was one where Cillian Murphy isn't even talking. He's just letting his eyes and his expression show what he's feeling. He's that fucking good in this movie. I mean, really, the entire cast in this movie does a phenomenal job. I mean, Emily Blunt's great, Florence Pugh's great, Matt Damon's really good. There's also a lot of actors in this movie that kind of make appearances that you weren't necessarily expecting. And what I love is every big name actor that you might spot in this movie all had a moment or a scene or a couple scenes anyway that you really felt like mattered to the movie. Like they were cast in this movie not just for the sake of having this actor in the movie, but because they were playing a role, even if it was only for a scene or a moment or whatever, that really fit them. It really is becoming a testament to Christopher Nolan, who he is as a director, what his reputation is, that so many big name actors want to be a part of his movies, even if it's not for much of it. The other performance that I really want to get to in this movie, though, is Robert Downey Jr. There's going to be quite a few Oscar nominations for this movie across the board. Robert Downey Jr. for Best Supporting Actor is going to be one of them. And for my money right now, I think he should be the favorite for that Oscar. His performance in this movie is just absolutely transcendent. And what I really appreciate from Robert Downey Jr. is he doesn't have to do anything anymore. I mean, the man was Iron Man for, what was it, 11 years in the Infinity Saga, which is the best part of what is now the most successful superhero franchise that's been made and probably ever will be made. He doesn't have to do anything. He could just show up, phone it in. I mean, his face is going to sell tickets. He'll get his paychecks. He doesn't have to do anything anymore. He did that for so long. He's good. He's set. Not only does Robert Downey Jr. come onto this movie and is a big part of this movie, or at least his character is when it matters to the story, but he gives such an incredible performance. There are certain monologues and certain things his character does and says that gave me absolute chills. I mean, back in the day, Robert Downey Jr. was seen as one of the most talented actors in the movie industry, and I think now we're really reminded more so, yeah, he absolutely is. He's not just Iron Man, he can do this too. Getting to more of the technical aspects of this movie, I really appreciate just how this movie was shot. There are a lot of different moments in this movie where it's presented to us in color, and then there are other moments where it's presented in black and white, and you'd think maybe with all that, you know, changing between different formats and different coloration, that it would kind of take you out of the movie, but it really didn't. It kind of, in a way, just brought you more into the world. Because when you really sit down and experience this movie, it has a way of just sucking you in to the point where you feel like you are in this time period. You are trying to, you're there with the soldiers and the scientists and with Oppenheimer, and you feel like you're there experiencing what the world's going through, what the Manhattan Project entails. You're just a part of all of it because the movie just sucks you in and makes you feel like you are part of a very different time period. I also mentioned earlier that this movie visually did not depend on CGI whatsoever. I can tell you right now, when you watch this movie and you just see how it looks and how it appears, there are certain moments in particular that I'll get into that clearly look like CGI. And the fact that Christopher Nolan has adamantly stated there is no CGI in this movie whatsoever is just insane. Like, how do you make some of these shots without CGI? It's incredible. There are periods where you're kind of going through Oppenheimer's mind and you're seeing what he's thinking, you're seeing physics kind of play out in his head, and it just looks absolutely extraordinary. It looks like something, it made sense. Like, all the visuals just made sense what you were looking at. It looked like someone who was just thinking of different formulas and certain ways of how they're going to create this, you know, atomic bomb. But all of it looked like it had to be CGI. The fact that it wasn't, it kind of just leaves you sitting there like, how in the world did Christopher Nolan do it? I mean, the guy's just a magician. And I'm going to tell you right now, this scene with the atomic bomb itself, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop in my movie theater with how it looked and the way it sounded. It absolutely knocks you on your ass. That's what I'll further say right there. The sound mix in this movie, I know that's been a complaint lately with some of Christopher Nolan's previous movies, but here, I thought it was done very well. There weren't a lot of moments where, a lot of ambient noise is going off in the background and characters are talking, and so you feel like you can't really understand them or anything like that. For the most part, the sound was used very well, and sound is used very effectively. Another thing that I want to get into is probably the length of this movie, because I feel like that's what's maybe going to throw some people off. This movie is around 3 hours long, and not only is it 3 hours long, but it is a dialogue-heavy movie. This isn't like, any of the Batman movies he created, or Inception, or Interstellar, where there's a lot of maybe action and sci-fi movies that are going on, or sci-fi movie elements, I should say, that are going on. In this case, it's a very dialogue-heavy movie. It's a lot of characters, just talking about what's going on, what's happening in their lives, what's happening in the project. There are certain periods in the movie where certain actors are now getting more screen time. We're learning more about their characters, and they're, letting themselves get more of a performance. It's a very dialogue-heavy movie, and as a result of that, it could take people out of the movie. For me, though, I was completely sucked into the movie from the get-go. And I think that's not just because of how well the performances were in this movie, but also just how excellent the writing was. The dialogue is so rich and really just brings the characters out. The way the actors delivered them was exquisite. The whole time you are there, you are locked in, and you just want to absorb every piece of information or every piece of character development that the movie is giving you. The more and more you learn about Oppenheimer's character and what he's dealing with and how he's going about this project, what his family's going through, what the people in the military feel, what people on the various side of politics are thinking. It sucks you in and it leaves you invested. In fact, I remember seeing this movie opening night with one of my friends, and he said the whole time, as soon as the movie was over, he's like, I had a bunch of candy with me. I didn't touch it once. Like, that is what this movie does. It sucks you in and it holds you because you're just like, I need to be fully invested into this so I can understand everything. I think because of something like that, it is the type of movie that's probably going to demand multiple viewings. And I really appreciate that because I want to feel like I can constantly go back to a movie and gain more from it. Christopher Nolan's done that before. He's done that with movies like Inception and Interstellar. I mean, you could make a case for really any of his movies, honestly. Like, a lot of his movies demand replay, and I love replay value. I mean, hell, in a lot of ways, it makes me excited to go see this movie again, and I think others are excited to go see this movie again because I think Christopher Nolan maybe also thought to himself, if he makes a movie that's just complex enough but not overly complex, it will demand people to go see it multiple times in theaters, which will then in turn make it a big success of the box office, which is what everyone wants to see. We all want to see great movies receive success. I think this movie's going to do just that. I think what also might make the movie maybe a little difficult for some to follow is its storytelling. The movie does, in ways, jump a little bit all over the place. I mentioned that it'll go from moments where it's in color and then it's in black and white. It does the same thing. It jumps a little bit around the time period at times. Like, we could be at a moment where we're looking at what Oppenheimer was doing before he was recruited. And then it could shift to a moment where he's being interrogated or he's going through some sort of legal issue or whatever it could be. And as a result of that, it might feel a little, I guess you could say, disoriented at first. But I will say, for me, it was kind of like Bane's voice in The Dark Knight Rises. Like, The Dark Knight Rises, you hear him talk for the first time, you're like, all right, it'll take me a minute to adjust to this, but then I'll be good. This was kind of the same deal. Once I saw what the movie was going for with a little bit of the out-of-place storytelling, that's when it clicked in my head. I'm like, all right, now that I know what's going on, I'm good. And that's what I really appreciate here. This movie tackles a lot of different genres. It's not just a straight-up biopic, but, it's, in a lot of ways, it's a very serious character drama. It's a courtroom movie, a big legal courtroom kind of movie. It has a lot of horror elements to it. There are definitely some sci-fi-ish elements here. There's definitely some military political elements here. It tackles a lot. Just to call this movie a biopic is severely undercutting it. And I'm really glad that it ended up being as grand scale with its genres that it ended up being. So all in all, Oppenheimer is an absolute masterclass. Cillian Murphy gives a performance of his career. I would be absolutely shocked if anyone else topped this performance this year. I mean, I've been wrong before, but it would blow my mind if that happened. Robert Downey Jr. is spectacular in this movie. I mean, the whole cast, Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon, everyone else you see. There's not a false note anywhere in this movie. Visually, it looks spectacular without any CGI, which I still think is ridiculous. Sound mixing, it sounds spectacular. The dialogue was incredibly rich and demands your attention. The movie completely sucks you into its world. Even the whole technical aspect of this movie. I mean, I didn't get to see this movie in IMAX 70mm. I'm hoping to find one of the few theaters that could be playing in that format near me, and then I'm intending to go check that out, but I imagine when I do, it would just make the experience that much more transcendent. It's a 3-hour movie that just sunk its claws into me and just kept me locked into it the entire time. In the end, I cannot wait to see Oppenheimer again. And some people have said, in this moment, you really feel like Christopher Nolan is really going for the Oscar here. He's really trying to finally get that Best Director, potentially even Best Picture award that he's been probably craving for a while. And I'll say this right now, this is probably his best shot at it without becoming a pure art house movie that would just lose fans. This feels like that perfect line of a movie where it's like, it's going to appeal to the Academy, but movie lovers like us will want to be a part of it too. So I will be rooting like hell that Christopher Nolan gets the recognition from the Academy that he absolutely deserves. Oh, I'm so happy this movie was what it was. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.